Yo, what's up internet? My name is Anthony and the Raiders training camp is about to begin. With that in mind, I'm going to give my season prediction. I'm going to go week by week and give you the record after each game. Let's go. In week 1, we had the season opener against the Titans. We've had to play them the last few years in Tennessee, and each time it's a close victory. I expect this game to be no different. I really like the Titans this year, and they've gotten more weapons from Mariota. Still, it takes time to gel, and the Raiders are the better team, so the Raiders start out at 1-0. In week 2, we had the home opener against the Jets. They might be the least talented team in the NFL. They got rid of all their weapons on offense, and their secondary was terrible last year. The defensive line is still one of the best in the league, but luckily, we have one of the best offensive lines in football. This should be a pretty easy win by NFL standards, and we're off to 2-0. In week 3, we take on the Redskins in Washington, D.C. The Redskins are no joke and shouldn't be overlooked, especially on the road. This game is in prime time, and the stadium will be hostile. The Redskins are an above-average team, and Kirk Cousins is really good at getting the ball to his weapons. Good early test for our defense, especially guarding tight end Jordan Reed. The Raiders are the better team and have the better quarterback, and will win this game in a nail-biter, starting off hot at 3-0. In week 4, we take on the Broncos at Denver. Even with Derek Carr at quarterback last year, I think the Raiders would have lost the season ender. This defense is elite, and nothing would make them happier than stopping the Raiders from going 4-0. The Broncos' offense is steady, and the defense stops the Raiders, thus handing the Raiders their first loss of the season, dropping them to 3-1. In week 5, we take on the Ravens at home. This situation is just like the Titans. Close games the last few years, with the Raiders pulling out the W at the end. This year, the Ravens lost their biggest offensive weapon in Steve Smith and replaced it with Jerry Maclin. Maclin is a playmaker and gives Flacco another big weapon. The Raiders, on the other hand, score in bunches, and this game should be another shootout. The Raiders are at home and are the better team, and finish this game at 4-1. In week 6, the Raiders take on the Chargers at home. The Chargers always play the Raiders close, and divisional games can't be ignored. This team is a sleeper to make the playoffs, and Phillip Rivers always produces no matter the circumstance. This game will be close again, but the Raiders pull out a victory. Khalil Mack has a big game, and the Raiders are 5-1. In week 7, the Raiders play on Thursday night with the Chiefs, having to travel 2 time zones, while the Raiders stay at home from the previous game. This is just like the game last year, but reversed with the Raiders on the road. I hate Thursday night games, but the Raiders win this one. It's a defensive battle with the Raiders scoring late, giving them a 6-1 record. In week 8, the Raiders take on the Bills at Buffalo. The Bills are one of the weird teams in the NFL. They are average and can win or lose against anybody, and it wouldn't surprise me. Luckily, this game is in October, and it shouldn't be snowing yet. The Raiders win this game pretty handily and continue their hot start at 7-1. In week 9, the Raiders take on the Dolphins on Sunday night at Miami. Here begins the tough set of games the Raiders have to play. Another East Coast game, but this time on Sunday night against the Dolphins. The stadium will be rocking as the Dolphins look to get a much-needed win. The Raiders are the better team, but a long road trip in an electric atmosphere proved too much for the Raiders as they fall to 7-2. In week 10, the Raiders take on the Patriots in Mexico. The Patriots are the class of the league, and the Belichick-Brady combo is the deadliest we've ever seen. This game will be in Mexico City and will be largely filled with Raiders fans. This is a battle to see who's the better team in the AFC and to test if the Raiders can truly challenge the Patriots. In the end, the Patriots beat the Raiders in a close game, and the Raiders lose 2 in a row, falling to 7-3. In week 11, the Raiders take on the Broncos at home. After a long time away from home, the Raiders finally get a true home game. The Raiders figure out they need to take advantage of their offensive line and just run the Broncos to the ground. Just like Sunday night last year, the Raiders dominate the Broncos physically and bounce back to 8-3. In week 12, the Raiders play the Giants at home. Back-to-back home games and against the Giants this time. The Giants have plenty of weapons on the outside, but their offensive line is still pretty awful. This is around the time that Khalil Mack starts to dominate, and he'll feast on the Giants line, giving Eli Manning hell. This will be a defensive battle, but in the end, the Raiders have a better line and give Carr time to pull out a win, giving him a record of 9-3. In week 13, the Raiders take on the Chiefs at Kansas City. The Chiefs are always a problem for Derek Carr, and this time will be no different. The place will be cold, and the offense won't be flying as high. The Raiders do have a beastly ground game, but it's not enough to make up for the lack of passing. The Chiefs stifle the Raiders and do enough so that the Raiders lose, finishing this game at 9-4. In game number 14, the Raiders take on the Cowboys at home. What a tough set of games. 5 playoff teams and the Broncos all in a row. They finished the gauntlet by playing the Cowboys in prime time. This is a battle of two offenses with two of the best offensive lines in football. Still, the Raiders have a game record on defense in Khalil Mack, giving them the edge, and the Raiders finish this game at 10-4. After taking on playoff team after playoff team, the Raiders go to Philadelphia on Christmas on Monday night. This is the worst time to get a Monday night game. The Raiders have to go across the country in the cold in a very hostile environment in prime time. I think the circumstances work too much against the Raiders, and the team loses, dropping them to 10-5. For the final game of the season, the Raiders take on the Chargers. This game will be in LA, but it will be a home game for the Raiders. The stadium will be filled with Raider fans, just like in San Diego. Phillip Rivers is still going to make this game competitive, but the Raiders will pull this one out in the end again. The Raiders finish strong and win the division at 11-5.